So The Athletic has given us a little college football content.
Yeah, thank God.
College football's top 100 rivalries.
Could we, real quick before we get to it, don't we agree that there's been less lists during list season?
I feel like it's coming. July.
It's after July 4th.
Okay,
Here we go.
Okay.
All-Star breaks next week.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Michigan, Ohio State, number 1.
Easy.
Yeah. Auburn, Alabama. Yeah. Yeah.
Paul.
When you factor in like the stakes of the game, the rivalry, those are the two big dogs in that state.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm not pushing back. I'm not pushing back on the importance of the Iron Bowl. I'm just a red-blooded American that loves Army Navy. That I think
still like them.
I think Army Navy should be 2, and I would put Auburn out. I would put Auburn, Alabama 3, and then what? I'm assuming Texas, Oklahoma is
Oklahoma is currently 3. Army Navy is 4.
Okay.
I'm fine with this.
I'm told this is great. It's a good list.
5 is USC Notre Dame. You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
You have 2 gigantic brands that have been.
I agree.
Rockney.
I'm cool.
Now comes Nebraska, Oklahoma at 6. I think that.
I don't know.
I think Barry Switzer. So there are times where you go, man, I love that coach, but I hate his team. I think Barry Switzer is that. I think people love Barry Switzer but hated Oklahoma. Kind of. We could have hated Oklahoma more, but they broke our heart. If you think about this, and this is a great stat in this athletic story about this being the 6th best college football rivalry, is they combined for 96 conference titles from 62 to 95. Only twice did neither claim a share of the Big 8 title. At least one team was ranked in 63 of their 72 matchups in the AP poll that was introduced in 1936. Both teams were ranked 25 times and in the top 10 in 18 games. That includes 16 top 10 matchups from 71 to 88. Now, the bad thing is Nebraska only won 4 of those. 5 times the Sooners handed Nebraska their only regular season loss, while Nebraska handed Oklahoma its only regular season loss twice.
So, can you tell me what 7, 8, and 9 is?
Well, let me finish here about Nebraska, Oklahoma.
Go ahead. 7, 8, 9.
So this is something that I think killed the national fan base for Nebraska and Oklahoma to grow. When the Big 10, or the Big 12, said, you know what, divisions sound like a great idea. Nobody wants to see Nebraska and Oklahoma playing every year.
Literally nobody said that. Everyone wanted.
How many people have you run into in your lifetime that will remember what they were doing on Black Friday or Thanksgiving when Nebraska and Oklahoma would play and they stopped to watch? There weren't as many games on TV, so it was even more of a bigger deal. But I have heard more people in my lifetime off of that game say, that's how I became a Nebraska fan. Because every year in my household growing up, we watched Nebraska, Oklahoma, and I felt bad for Nebraska, or I was a big Steve Taylor fan, or I was a big Turner Gill fan. But we watched Nebraska, Oklahoma, and that's how I became a Nebraska fan. When you go, wait a minute, you live in Destin, Florida. How did you become a Nebraska fan? They'll say, because when I was growing up, that game was on the TV.
They threw oranges on the field.
And it was special. Miami, Florida State is 7.
What's 8?
Ohio State, Penn State.
Ooh, I don't hate it.
Recency type deal.
Very recent.
Because the next one.
What's 9?
Florida State.
See, my only issue. So
they don't play. The stakes at the game.
That damn game in the 90s.
Oh, well, the 96 regular season finale when it was 1 versus 2, when Florida State beat Florida.
Danny Werfel took the beating of a lifetime.
In your guys' opinion, because
he got his revenge.
So reading this article,
the choke at Doak,
the whole Nebraska and Oklahoma, there's a tremendous amount of respect between the two sides, and there is. Whenever I've talked to anybody about
family,
those games, they hate Oklahoma. They want to beat Oklahoma. They want to defeat them. They know they have to beat them, but it's also, we're very grateful that there's another team that we can consistently play and have these incredible matchups with.
Everyone should have a cross-division
add to the rivalry or take away from the rivalry?
I don't know. Florida and Florida State people hate each other.
Exactly. And so to me, that is with Nebraska not playing each other, the Nebraska and Oklahoma not playing each other as frequently, and Florida State playing each other very frequently and having that hate for each other, it's just 6 is I have so much respect and so much admiration for what the history was.
There's also part of a rivalry. That's why I disagree with Iowa being really on this list, is Do you know that Iowa and Nebraska have never played when both teams were ranked?
Right.
Okay. So Nebraska, Oklahoma, there was always something big that was on the line, which, that loss would ruin your season.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I look at this. Let's see here. 10 is Minnesota, Wisconsin.
See, Nebraska losing to Iowa, that loss was brutal this year. Not so much because you lost to Iowa, but it was because you wanted to win another game to get to a better bowl game. Like, it wasn't this loss is so terrible because we dropped one of the Hawkeyes. Like, it was more so like, yeah, we dropped one of the Hawkeyes. We hate that we lost to Iowa. We don't like Iowa. But it was more so to do with, like, what was the outlook of the game after?
Nebraska, Iowa is just a rivalry in the stands. On the field, it has to be. You got to start winning.
You can't get your ass.
You got to start winning.
Rivalry,
and the stakes have to be pretty darn high.
Now in the stands and between the coaching staffs, it's on like Donkey Kong. But on the field, Nebraska has to hold up their end of the bargain. I told you guys, Nebraska's up by 40 against Iowa on Black Friday in Lincoln. Matt Rule will onside kick.
Well, I love that. I love that because
there is no other loss down there that bugs those guys more than that game.
I think,
and all of
that's how rivalry
crap that went on in that game.
Exactly.
Iowa Nebraska doesn't go anywhere until you win a game.
Yeah. But I think Iowa Nebraska has had legs and definitely still has legs.
No, it's a forced one to me.
It is
because of the location of the two programs. But on the field, Nebraska has to win.
It's definitely,
and also again, they've never played each other when both teams have been ranked.
It's definitely forced.
It has potential.
It's definitely forced, but there it is.
It has great potential.
It has great potential.
The next generation.
Like it has potential to be something really big. But I agree with you. But it has a lot of potential.
The Big Ten tried to force Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, Nebraska. They're not even playing this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you need that. Like, I think when you moved away,
forced into a rivalry.
No, you just a rivalry. Rivalries make sports. Rivalries are
it's
just
about hating your opponent.
Exactly,
right.
and it's like
enhance your hate,
and it adds another layer to like why you root and why you enjoy the game.
Here's some hate. They don't really have a long history of both teams being good at the same time. Nebraska, Colorado is 33rd on this list now. Between 88 and 96, which I've always told everybody I came along when Oklahoma was going down, so I didn't get to bask in that this sucks. I enjoyed beating the hell out of CU.
You got the Buffs coming at that time.
But 88 to 96, they played, and every year, Nebraska and Colorado were ranked. Mm-hmm. They had the best dudes.
Yeah.
They were the best teams, and they were the best games in the old Big Eight.
Big Bill McCartney just had a way of getting under Nebraska feathers.
It was
skin.
It would be a Saturday afternoon in October in an 11 a.m. game, and you would have a top 3 matchup. And also, if you lost to them, your season was over. Okay? But they're 33rd on this list, and they haven't played like a big game.
I think last year was a pretty. It wasn't nearly that big as what it used to be.
No.
But it's still a pretty decent game last year. I mean, there were some stakes there from both sides for sure in that stadium.
But on the national stage,
no.
Yeah, these have to be national.
So I do think though,
and that game was must watch for me.
The Nebraska Iowa rivalry for me has grown over the last 5 years. Okay, there's more hate now than there was 5 years ago for the Hawkeye fan base. If you're a Nebraska fan, which is good, and I actually think it's actually kind of impressive that the hate has grown. And that rivalry has gotten more fierce while Nebraska has been getting their ass whooped, right? While there hasn't been that, like, what you talk about, that ranked matchup, that important matchup. The fact that we are getting to the point where we are developing our hate for Iowa, yet there hasn't been that big game. What happens when there is that big game? What happens if Nebraska and Iowa are fighting for that final college football playoff spot? If they're both, well,
they were supposed to both be fighting for. That's why the game was Big Ten West, because it was going to be played on Black Friday, and that was the showcase game. And you win, and you go off to Indianapolis. You guys realize something here? And I'm not playing tongue-in-cheek about Rule. Like, Rule is riled up about Iowa. So is Holgerson. Like, Holgerson has used the word, we choked the game away. So you're up 40, and you want an onside kick. You guys also know that is the last trip by Kirk Ferentz into Lincoln. And that would be his last regular season game. I believe this is his last year there. He'll set the record for the most wins as a Big Ten coach, and he will ride off into the sunset this year. But Nebraska will be his last regular season game. Don't you want to ruin that?
Oh my God!
Don't you want to ruin that?
Oh my God!
Well,
that would
these are the things that start
exactly,
rivalries.
Jimmy.
Thank you.
This is what elevates it. This is when.
That's what's
can you
missing
imagine
right
how
now.
pissed off Iowa Hawkeye fans would be if Nebraska fans, rightfully so, would rub in, "Hey, nice last game, Kirk. We ruined it for you."
And then
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
LeVar Woods would take over.
Exactly.
Matt chimes in. Let me look at this on the list here.
44 is. I mean, I would have to see what's around it, but I think it's got a lot of legs. I don't think it could be top 10 ever.
Matt writes in the backyard brawl, Pitt, West Virginia in the 90s.
Oh, that was
Notre Dame versus the Catholics convicts. So 26th on this list is the backyard brawl.
Is Notre Dame Michigan on that list?
Yes, they had 18th.
They don't play nearly as much as they should. I love it when they play. Now here's the funny thing though about Notre Dame.
Notre Dame,
and this is me being Notre Dame hater and making jokes, but this is the honest to God's truth. In Notre Dame, every opponent they play is a rival. They have 20 rivals. Every single opponent they play, they claim is their rival. Michigan State's their rival. Penn State's their rival.
Northern
Michigan,
Illinois, Marshall.
No, Navy's their rival.
Piggybacking off of you.
There were a lot of people who did not think Marcus Freeman was going to work out in that parking lot at South Bend after they lost. They're like, this ain't going to work.
56th is Notre Dame, Miami on this list.
Whoa.
And look at Miami, Florida State. When they left the Orange Bowl, there was a lot of soul that left that game. There was something about that.
Isn't that the opener this year isn't Notre Dame, Miami an opener?
Yeah.
Hey, I think you guys should go about your day as you get ready for the early release of College Football 26
soon
in an hour and 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And also just step back and realize that on the 30th of August, we get Texas, Ohio State, and LSU Clemson.
That'll be a good game.
It's the greatest sport. Greatest season.
Notre Dame, Miami, lower than Iowa, Nebraska?
Yes.
Yeah, it's missing a lot from what made it
but Scott Docterman put this list together, so he maybe had some personal hate. Just kidding. I like Doc. But I don't think Iowa, Nebraska, rivalries are not forced. They are organic, as Bob Devaney once said.
But they can be forced.
Maybe he did. I don't know.
They can be forced, and then something organic can happen within the
Big Ten tried. The Big Ten tried to jam all these friggin' trophies down our throat.
None of them with a live animal.
I'm telling you, the best trophy game is not on this list in Nebraska, Minnesota, but they tried to shove these rivalries down our throat because this is what we do in the Big Ten. Now, Nebraska hasn't held up their end of the bargain, but you cannot force a rivalry. They have to be on the field.
Yes.
They start and then into the stands, or vice versa.
Like the UCF-UConn rivalry.
Like you can make a case that Colorado-Nebraska isn't really a rivalry. It just was a forced rivalry by Bill McCartney that Nebraska said, all right, we'll play. Mm-hmm. And it happened, and it was a short stretch. If you think about it, 88 to 96. That was boom. That was the rivalry, a banger after banger. And we're also spoiled around here because we had that super long stretch where you were born, you got married, you had kids, and Nebraska, Oklahoma was relevant. So we compare all of that and thinking, okay, we want something. And we had 88 to 96 of Colorado.
But even if, to me, so what if it's forced? Okay, it's a forced rivalry. But for those 8 years, it created incredible memories and games that we still talk about. Yeah. And so much so that then 25 years later, Colorado comes back to Nebraska, and it's a really, really big deal because of that rivalry that was made, that, forced or not, that was in the 80s to the 90s. So for me, I'm okay if you're farming rivalries. I'm fine with it because I just think it adds an element to the sport that I love, and it creates memories, and it creates storylines and things.
I think we should force a Nebraska-UCLA rivalry.
No, well, there are some rivalries you just can't force.
Let's pick one and force it.
Yeah,
we got to
pick someone to hate.
We'll be back after this.
Minnesota.